First of all, let me just point out that this video isn't going to defend D&D in any way. Even though there have been several videos of people venting out their frustration about the 8th season, I still feel the need to put my thoughts out there. So tuck in those panties and let's get into this shit show. Let's go back to when season 6 ended, and everyone including me was eager to hear about any news for season 7. Eventually, an announcement was released that season 7 was going to be 7 episodes and season 8 was going to be 6 episodes. And I already started to feel worried. My first thought was, I guess after season 6, George gave D&D a little amount of information for the future of his books, and D&D decided to stretch out what little information they had into 2 seasons to squeeze out as much money as possible from the show. It really disappointed me to learn recently that George wanted D&D to go to at least 10 seasons and possibly even more. If you don't believe me, here's a clip.
Why is it ending?
I don't know. Ask David and Dan when they come through. We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life.
So you wanted it to keep going.
Well, if you've read my novels, you know there was enough material for more seasons. They made certain cuts, but that's fine.
Now, did you know Game of Thrones would be ending with this season, or did they call you and say, hey, let's have a chat?
David and Dan have been saying for, like 5 years that 7 seasons was all they would go. And we got them to go to 8, but not any more than that. So, I had to custom that. There was a period like 5 years ago where they were saying 7 seasons and I was saying 10 seasons. And, they won. They're the ones actually working on it.
So what made D&D not want to extend the show after 8 seasons? Because I think even if they just did seasons 7 and 8 with 10 episodes, they could have had more time to wrap up the show in a more satisfying way. Everything sort of became clear when D&D were announced to produce a Knights of the Old Republic movie. But it seems that rushing Game of Thrones in order to start this new Star Wars trilogy was not a good idea, because now fans are so enraged about the ending of Game of Thrones that they are now signing a petition for D&D to not write the next Star Wars movie. If I'm being honest, I don't think Star Wars can be ruined any more than it already has, but that's a topic for another video. Let's get back into Game of Thrones. Fans should have been signing petitions before season 7 and 8 released, asking D&D to have 10 episodes in both of the last 2 seasons. What I'm trying to get at is basically nobody should have been looking forward for these last 2 seasons. There was no possible way for them to wrap up the series in any good way with such a short amount of time. D&D were practically setting themselves up for failure. A part of me thinks that they knew they were going to royally fuck up, but just couldn't care less because they wanted to be done with the show. Instead of taking their time to finish the show in a proper way, D&D were more focused on moving on to other projects. One of my main questions with D&D is, what was the point of continuing the series if your heart wasn't in it anymore? I think it would have been better if they just passed on the writing to someone else. But not just anyone, maybe someone who's worked closely with them and George in order to know the best steps to take for the show. The only thing that made these last couple seasons watchable was the soundtrack and visuals. There are so many breathtaking scenes with just stunning VFX with great music in the background to back up those amazing effects.
We can hold them off.
But, unfortunately, great visuals and a great soundtrack really couldn't distract me from the terrible writing. One thing that really caught me off guard on how bad the writing really was for season 8 was how D&D just threw away Jaime Lannister's character. I love when characters in movies or in TV shows start off as ones we hate, but slowly throughout the story, they turn into characters we can sympathize with. I think that characters like these have more depth and really makes me want to see more from his or her story. At first, we meet Jamie as a smug knight who loves to fuck his sister and is willing to do anything not to let anyone get in between them. From seasons 1 through 3, I hated Jamie. And I mean, who wouldn't? Not only did he murder people for his sister, but he loved to bring people down with his witty remarks. I was happy when his hand got chopped off, because I thought he deserved it. But then, in season 3, episode 5, I was confused on what to think about of Jamie's character when he revealed to Brienne that he killed the Mad King in order to save King's Landing. As the show progressed, Jamie eventually became one of my favorite characters of the series. Now, I thought when Jamie was telling Brienne everything he's done for Cersei, this was him realizing all of the terrible deeds he's done for her. I predicted that Jamie was going to kill Cersei before season 8 started, and I had a strong feeling that my prediction was coming true after the scene. Not only did it annoy me that Jamie told Tyrion that he didn't care for the people in King's Landing, even though we all know that he saved people of King's Landing from the Mad King, but it really pissed me off that he just went to go die with Cersei. And I know that Jamie told Bronn that he wanted to die in the arms of the woman he loves, but I really was just not happy with the way his story ended. Even though that's just one of the many things that really annoy me from the last couple seasons, I never felt the need to sign a petition saying we need to get competent writers to redo season 8. I just kind of felt that I needed to talk to my friends and say to them, yeah, that was pretty terrible. But in the end, I just said to myself, well, if they want to end it that way, there's nothing really we can do now because it's all set in stone. I will admit, it is hard to take in that it's over, and the ending was compared to being as bad as The Last Jedi, which, in my opinion, considering how terrible that movie was, is a pretty fucking insulting thing to say about Game of Thrones. But honestly, I do think that I can forgive D&D because they did give me the funniest scene in television history. Now, just because I said in this video that people should have been expecting this last season to be a rushed mess, doesn't mean that I don't agree with the reaction that people are having over the finale. Just because I was expecting these last 2 seasons to be bad, doesn't mean I wasn't disappointed. And that's why I brought up Jaime Lannister, because I had high hopes that they would at least finish his story off right, but of course they couldn't because they had no time. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe better writers could have been able to finish the series off right with such a short amount of time. Looking back at it, I'm just surprised that nobody started a petition 3 years ago asking D&D to at least have 10 episodes for each of the last 2 seasons. And we're not the only ones who wanted more seasons. HBO even wanted Game of Thrones to go to at least 10 seasons. So if you're looking to blame anyone for the reason why the finale to Game of Thrones was terrible, look at D&D. Don't look at the actors because even though they had shitty writing, they did a phenomenal job producing their really crappy lines. And don't look at HBO because they wanted more seasons while D&D wanted to move on. Now that the television series ended in such a terrible way, I actually bought the first book the other day because I want to know how George is going to end it. And when watching this clip of George R. Martin asking Stephen King how he writes so fast, it makes me feel a little confident that I'll be able to catch up on the books before he finishes the next one.
Yes, there is something I want to ask you.
All right.
How the fuck do you write so many books so fast? I think, I've had a really good 6 months. I've written 3 chapters, and you've finished 3 books in that time. Do you hit 6 pages a day?
I usually do.
You don't ever have a day where you sit down there and it's like constipation, and you write a sentence and you hate the sentence, and
Okay.
you check your email and you wonder if you had any talent after all, and Maybe you should have been a plumber. Don't you have days like that?
So I'd like to say that I have a solid 10. Yeah, I would say maybe 10 years before the next one comes out. Well, that kind of does it for my opinion on this matter. And I'm sure some people watching will disagree with me, and that's fine. You don't really have to take this seriously. I'm just some guy on the internet voicing my opinion behind a computer screen. So